Ever wonder how the world's first influencers shaped entire empires? What if learning wasn't just about books, but about powerful guilds battling kings and popes? Get ready to dive into the truly wild world of medieval academic powerhouses from the 11th to the 15th centuries. Deep in the heart of Portugal, a center of learning rose that would profoundly shape a nation. The University of Coimbra traces its roots back to Lisbon, where King Dinis established it in 1290. This was not just a school. It was a studium generale, a place with royal backing where scholars could study law, medicine, theology, and the arts. From its very beginning, Coimbra's existence was marked by movement and struggle, a testament to the power dynamics at play. The university did not stay put in Lisbon. It moved to Coimbra in 1308, back to Lisbon in 1338, returned to Coimbra in 1354, then again to Lisbon in 1377, before settling permanently in Coimbra in 1537. This constant relocation was not merely a logistical challenge. It showed the intense negotiations and conflicts between the crown, the city, and the academic community itself. The masters and students formed a powerful corporation, much like the guilds of craftsmen or merchants. They had their own statutes, their own courts, and their own privileges granted by the king. These privileges were a source of immense power. For instance, students often enjoyed immunity from local civil jurisdiction, meaning they could only be tried by the university's own legal system, a huge advantage in a time when local justice could be swift and brutal. This independence often led to clashes with the townspeople of Lisbon or Coimbra. Records from the royal decrees of Dinis I, a collection of medieval Portuguese laws, often show royal interventions to calm disputes between students and citizens. The university's power was not just legal, it was intellectual. Coimbra became a vital training ground for the administrators and lawyers who would serve the Portuguese crown. Graduates were sought after for positions in the royal chancery, the courts, and diplomatic missions. This made the university indispensable to the functioning of the state. The faculty of law, in particular, was a stronghold of influence. Doctors of civil law and canon law educated at Coimbra were instrumental in shaping the legal framework of the growing Portuguese kingdom. They advised kings on matters of war and peace, on trade agreements, and on the delicate balance of power with the church. Their expertise was crucial during the Age of Discoveries, when Portugal's maritime empire began to expand. Lawyers from Coimbra helped to legitimize Portuguese claims to newly discovered lands and to negotiate treaties with other European powers. The university's theologians also played a significant role, ensuring that the crown's actions were seen as morally and religiously justifiable, particularly concerning the treatment of indigenous populations in the new territories. The influence of Coimbra's academic guild extended far beyond its lecture halls, was a crucible for national identity and a pillar of royal authority. Its masters and students, despite their occasional quarrels and migrations, laid the intellectual groundwork for Portugal's rise as a global power. The institution's long history of moving showed its resilience and its deep connection to the political fortunes of the kingdom. Its ability to extract privileges from a powerful monarch underscored its inherent power as an organized academic entity. Number 9. University of Naples, Federico II. Far to the south, in the vibrant kingdom of Sicily, a different kind of academic power emerged. The University of Naples, Federico II, stands out because it was not formed by a spontaneous gathering of masters and students, like many of its northern counterparts. Instead, it was founded by a single formidable ruler, Emperor Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire, in 1224. Frederick, known as the Stupor Mundi, or Wonder of the World, for his intellect and ambition, had a very specific goal. He wanted to create a studium generale directly under his imperial control, one that would serve his empire and reduce the reliance of his subjects on the powerful universities in northern Italy, like Bologna, which were often aligned with the Pope. This direct imperial patronage meant that the University of Naples operated differently from its inception. It was a tool of statecraft. Frederick's decree establishing the university, preserved in the constitutions of Melfi, explicitly stated its purpose: to provide skilled administrators, lawyers, and physicians for his burgeoning bureaucracy and army. He forbade his subjects from attending other universities, a radical move that underscored his desire to centralize intellectual power. This imperial monopoly over education gave Naples a unique kind of strength. The university became a wellspring of trained officials who owed their loyalty directly to the emperor. Graduates were guaranteed employment in the imperial service, a powerful incentive that drew ambitious young men to Naples. The faculty of law was particularly strong, churning out legal minds capable of interpreting Roman law and applying it to Frederick's vast and complex empire. These legal scholars helped Frederick solidify his rule, providing the intellectual justification for his absolute authority. The university also cultivated medicine and philosophy, vital for a ruler who saw himself as both a Christian emperor and a philosopher king. Frederick himself was a keen scholar, interested in science and Arabic learning, and his court was a hub of intellectual activity. The university reflected this spirit. Despite its imperial origins, the academic community at Naples still functioned with a degree of internal autonomy, electing its rectors and professors, though ultimately accountable to the emperor. The university faced challenges, especially after Frederick's death, when his empire crumbled. It closed and reopened several times, reflecting the turbulent political landscape of southern Italy. Yet, its foundation by a powerful emperor set a precedent for state-controlled universities. It showed that academic institutions could be deliberately shaped by rulers to serve political ends, not just to foster independent scholarship. The fact that a ruler of Frederick II's stature devoted so much energy to its creation and sought to control the flow of intellectual talent speaks volumes about the perceived power of academic institutions in shaping society and governance. The university in Naples was a direct expression of imperial will and an essential organ of state power in medieval Italy. Number 8. University of Salamanca. Travel west to the Iberian Peninsula, and you find a vibrant academic powerhouse in Salamanca, Spain. The University of Salamanca's origins are somewhat debated, but it firmly established itself as a studium generale by 1218, granted royal charter by King Alfonso IX of Leon. It was confirmed by papal bull from Pope Alexander IV in 1255, giving it universal recognition and allowing its graduates to teach anywhere. This dual recognition from both king and pope was a hallmark of its strength and influence. Salamanca quickly rose to prominence as a center for law, canon law, and theology, profoundly influencing the intellectual and political life of the Castilian kingdom. Like other powerful academic guilds, Salamanca's masters and students organized themselves into a highly autonomous corporation. They elected their own rector, the university's chief administrator, who often held considerable power over the city itself. Students, organized into nations based on their region of origin, enjoyed significant privileges, including exemptions from taxes and military service. This autonomy frequently led to intense clashes with the municipal authorities and even with the crown. Historical accounts, such as the Chronica Latina Regum Castelli, describe incidents where students engaged in street brawls with townsfolk, knowing they were largely immune from local justice. The university's power was such that it could, and often did, leverage its collective might to protect its members and assert its independence. Salamanca's academic output was particularly critical during the Reconquista, the long process of Christian kingdoms reclaiming territory from Muslim rule. Lawyers trained at Salamanca helped to codify laws for the newly conquered lands and provided legal justifications for territorial expansion. Theologians engaged in debates about religious orthodoxy and played a role in the Spanish Inquisition, though their influence here was complex and varied. Later, in the 15th and 16th centuries, Salamanca became a crucible for ideas about international law and human rights, especially concerning the treatment of indigenous populations in the Americas. Scholars like Francisco de Vitoria, a prominent Salamanca theologian, challenged the justifications for conquest, laying groundwork for what would become international law. His ideas, articulated in his Relections Theologicae, had profound implications for Spain's overseas empire. The university's wealth was also a source of its power. It acquired lands, buildings, and endowments, giving it financial independence. It had its own printing press, a crucial innovation that allowed it to disseminate its scholars' works widely. By the late medieval period, Salamanca was one of the largest and most prestigious universities in Europe, drawing students from across Spain and beyond. Its influence was felt in the courts of kings, in the councils of the church, and in the very fabric of Spanish society. The masters and students of Salamanca were not just scholars. They were shapers of national policy, legal doctrine, and moral thought, wielding immense intellectual and political power through their collective organization and their deep integration into the state. Number 7. University of Montpellier. Along the sun-drenched Mediterranean coast of southern France, a distinct academic powerhouse emerged. The University of Montpellier, unlike the theology-dominated universities of Paris or Oxford, Montpellier gained its primary fame and power through its unrivaled schools of medicine and law. While it had earlier traditions of teaching, the university received its official papal bull from Pope Nicholas IV in 1289, consolidating its various schools into a single studium generale. This formal recognition solidified its reputation and attracted scholars and students from across Europe, particularly those interested in the practical sciences. Montpellier's medical school was its undisputed jewel. Its origins were somewhat unique, growing out of a long tradition of practical medicine practiced by Jewish, Arab, and Christian physicians in the region, drawing on a rich blend of classical Islamic and indigenous knowledge. This cosmopolitan approach was a radical departure from more dogmatic, medieval medical practices. Physicians trained at Montpellier were renowned for their empirical approach and their willingness to integrate new anatomical knowledge, often gained through dissections, a practice that was more common here than in other European centers. The university's medical doctors were highly sought after by popes, kings, and wealthy nobles across Europe. Their skills were literally matters of life and death, granting them a unique kind of social and political leverage. Records from various medieval courts often mention the summons of Montpellier-trained physicians for urgent medical consultations. The Guild of Masters and Students in Montpellier, particularly within the medical faculty, held significant power. They set their own curricula, examined their own students, and determined who was fit to practice medicine. This control over licensing gave them a professional monopoly that was fiercely guarded. Conflicts often arose with local apothecaries or less formally trained healers who tried to operate outside the university's authority. The university used its academic and legal power to protect its graduates and to ensure the supremacy of its medical standards. The law faculty also grew strong, providing skilled administrators and legal advisors to the French crown and local lords. Its expertise in Roman law and canon law was crucial for navigating the complex legal landscape of medieval France. Proximity of Montpellier to the Papal States and its historical ties to the Aragonese crown also gave it a unique gilding standing. It often served as a neutral ground for diplomatic meetings or a refuge for scholars during political upheavals. The university's power was not just intellectual. It was practical and professional. It produced the very people who kept the medieval elite healthy and governed the complex legal affairs of states. Its emphasis on practical application and its willingness to embrace diverse intellectual traditions made it a beacon of innovation. The highly specialized knowledge cultivated at Montpellier granted its academic guild a distinct and deeply influential form of power in the medieval world, shaping health practices and legal systems across kingdoms. Number 6. University of Padua. Just across the Alps, from Montpellier, another Italian academic powerhouse was forging its own path, the University of Padua. Founded in 1222 by a large group of students and masters who migrated from the more established University of Bologna, Padua's origins speak volumes about the power of these academic guilds. They were not merely passive recipients of education, they were active agents, capable of demanding better conditions, more autonomy, or simply a fresh start when disputes with city authorities or other scholars became unbearable. This secession from Bologna created a university with a strong student-led tradition from its very beginning. Padua quickly became renowned for its faculties of law and medicine, much like Montpellier, but it developed an even more robust and independent structure. The student-led model, where students elected their own rector and even hired and fired professors, gave the student body immense collective power. This was a direct inversion of the master-dominated universities like Paris. This unique organizational structure meant that the academic guild in Padua was driven by the needs and desires of its vast student population, many of whom were mature men, often already engaged in professional careers or from wealthy families. These students wielded their collective financial power and their ability to simply pack up and leave as a potent weapon in disputes with city authorities or professors. Records from the City Council of Padua frequently show attempts to appease the student body to prevent a mass exodus, which would cripple the city's economy. Padua's medical school became one of the foremost in Europe, known for its emphasis on empirical observation and detailed anatomical studies. It attracted some of the brightest medical minds of the era who pushed the boundaries of anatomical knowledge, often performing dissections in a dedicated anatomical theater, a rarity for the time. This focus on hands-on learning and critical inquiry challenged established medical dogma and produced highly skilled practitioners. The law faculty was equally distinguished, offering rigorous training in both civil and canon law. Graduates from Padua's law school were sought after throughout Europe for their expertise in legal administration and diplomacy. The university's long history under the Venetian Republic, which gained control of Padua in the early 15th century, also shaped its power. Venice, a pragmatic maritime republic, valued practical knowledge and scientific inquiry. It granted Padua significant liberties, allowing it to flourish as a center of scientific innovation. This patronage, combined with the student-led governance, fostered an environment of intellectual freedom that was often absent in more conservative institutions. Padua's academic guild was thus powerful not just because of its intellectual output, but because of its unique internal organization and its ability to attract and retain a vibrant community of scholars through a tradition of relative intellectual liberty. Its history of striking out on its own and its student-driven power solidified its place as a truly independent and influential academic force. Number 5. University of Salerno. Before the grand universities of Paris and Bologna truly dominated the European intellectual scene, a unique academic guild blossomed in southern Italy, the Scuola Medica Salernitana, or the Salerno Medical School. While not a university in the later, more formalized sense, with multiple faculties, Salerno was undoubtedly the most important and powerful center of medical learning in Europe during the early and high Middle Ages, particularly from the 10th to the 13th centuries. It functioned as an academic guild of medical practitioners and teachers, setting standards and transmitting knowledge. Its power was rooted in its specialized knowledge and its ability to attract students and patients from across the continent. Salerno's reputation was built on its eclectic approach to medicine, drawing from Greek, Latin, Arabic, and Jewish traditions. This congeal synthesis, rare for its time, was a key to its strength. Physicians from Salerno translated vital medical texts from Arabic into Latin, making ancient knowledge accessible to Western Europe at a time when much of it had been lost. Works like Avicenna's Canon of Medicine and Galen's anatomical treatises were studied and taught with fervor. This school was also notably progressive for its time, with evidence suggesting that women were among its teachers and practitioners, most famously Trotula of Salerno, whose medical writings on women's health were highly influential. The Regimen Sanitatis Salernitanum, a collection of health advice written in verse, became one of the most popular medical texts of the Middle Ages, widely copied and translated, showing the school's reach and influence on daily life. The doctors of Salerno formed a powerful professional guild. They were sought after by popes, emperors, and kings. Their medical expertise was literally life-saving, granting them immense social standing and political leverage. When a powerful ruler fell ill, a physician from Salerno might be dispatched, and his success or failure could impact court politics. The school's authority was so great that it became the recognized standard for medical practice. A decree by Emperor Frederick II in 1231, in his Constitutions of Melfi, explicitly stated that no one could practice medicine in his kingdom without being examined and approved by the masters of Salerno. This imperial endorsement cemented Salerno's monopoly on medical licensing and underscored its unique power as the ultimate arbiter of medical competence. Even as other universities grew, Salerno maintained its prestige in medicine. Doctors were among the first to systematically apply anatomical knowledge, often through animal dissections, and to emphasize empirical observation. Practical hands-on approach to healing, combined with its strong intellectual tradition, made Salerno an indispensable institution. It was a beacon of medical knowledge, and its academic guild, though focused on one discipline, wielded a power directly related to human well-being, a power that transcended political boundaries and influenced medical practice for centuries. The trust placed in its masters and the dependence of the elite on their skills speak volumes about its immense influence. Number 4. University of Cambridge. Across the English Channel, in the quiet fens of East Anglia, grew another intellectual giant, the University of Cambridge. Its story is inextricably linked to its older sibling, Oxford. In 1209, a group of scholars fled Oxford after a dispute with the townspeople following the accidental killing of a local woman. These masters and students, driven by a desire for intellectual freedom and safety, settled in Cambridge, establishing a new academic community. This origin story, a migration driven by conflict, immediately signals the power of these academic guilds to simply relocate and re-establish themselves, taking their intellectual capital with them. Cambridge quickly began to formalize its structure, though it remained smaller than Oxford for much of the medieval period. Like Oxford, it was organized into colleges, which gradually became the primary residential and teaching units. These colleges, often funded by wealthy patrons or religious orders, provided scholars with housing, chapels, and dedicated teaching spaces, fostering a close-knit intellectual community. The university received various royal and papal confirmations, solidifying its status as a studium generale. Its core strengths lay in theology, arts, and later, law. The academic guild in Cambridge, composed of its masters and the heads of its colleges, held considerable autonomy. They elected the chancellor, the university's chief officer, and developed their own statutes and disciplinary codes. This self-governance often put them at odds with both the Bishop of Ely and the townspeople of Cambridge. The university's power was evident in its constant struggle for privileges. Students, like those in Oxford, were generally exempt from local jurisdiction, a right fiercely defended by the university. When disputes with townsfolk erupted into violence, as they frequently did, the university often appealed directly to the crown, frequently securing favorable outcomes, including economic sanctions against the town. This ability to bypass local authority and appeal to higher powers underscored its political clout. Famous Cambridge scholars, though less numerous in the earlier medieval period than Oxford's, still contributed significantly to intellectual life. The university became a training ground for clergy, lawyers, and administrators who would serve the English crown and the church. By the later Middle Ages, Cambridge gained more prominence, becoming a significant force in English intellectual life, particularly during periods of religious ferment. Became a hub for Lollard sympathizers in the late 14th and early 15th centuries, showing its role as a place where dissenting ideas could take root and be debated, albeit often with significant risk. The twin universities of Oxford and Cambridge came to dominate English higher education, providing the intellectual backbone for the kingdom. Cambridge's power lay in its ability to attract and retain scholars, its robust collegiate system, and its successful defense of its privileges against local and even royal interference. It created an environment where intellectual life could flourish, even when it led to friction, making it a critical power player in the medieval academic landscape. Number 3. University of Oxford. Just west of London, the ancient city of Oxford became home to England's oldest and arguably most powerful academic guild, the University of Oxford. Its precise founding date is unclear, but teaching was certainly flourishing there by the late 11th century. Like Cambridge, Oxford's formal growth was spurred by an exodus. In 1167, King Henry II banned English students from attending the University of Paris. This royal decree effectively forced a concentration of scholars and masters in England, with Oxford becoming the primary beneficiary. This event highlights how political decisions could inadvertently empower academic centers. Oxford's academic guild quickly formalized its structure, becoming a studium generale, renowned for its excellence in theology, philosophy, and the liberal arts. Its masters and students organized themselves into a formidable corporation, complete with elected officials like the Chancellor, a powerful figure who often held more authority than the city mayor. The university developed a unique collegiate system, where students and masters lived and studied together in autonomous colleges, which became centers of intellectual and social life. These colleges, like Merton, Balliol, and University College, were endowed by wealthy patrons and provided financial stability and intellectual freedom. The power of Oxford's academic guild was most vividly demonstrated in its constant, often violent conflicts with the townspeople of Oxford. These town and gown riots were legendary. Students, often rowdy and privileged, clashed with locals, and the university, with its distinct legal jurisdiction, almost always emerged victorious. The St. Scholastica Day riot of 1355, which resulted in numerous deaths, led to severe penalties for the town. For centuries afterward, the mayor and leading citizens of Oxford were required to process through the streets each year, paying a symbolic fine to the university. This humiliation underscored the university's immense legal and political leverage, backed by royal and papal authority. Intellectually, Oxford was a crucible of medieval thought. It attracted some of the most brilliant minds of the age, including figures like Roger Bacon, a pioneer in optics and scientific method, and John Wycliffe, whose critiques of the Church laid groundwork for later reformations. Oxford's theologians played a critical role in shaping English religious doctrine, and its philosophers engaged in intense debates that pushed the boundaries of logic and metaphysics. Graduates from Oxford filled high positions in the English Church, royal administration, and the legal system, making the university an indispensable source of trained elite. Its masters often advised kings and popes on matters of state and faith. The sheer longevity, intellectual output, and enduring power struggles of the University of Oxford mark it as one of the most dominant and influential academic guilds of the medieval period, shaping not just English society but wider European intellectual currents. Number 2. University of Paris. When people think of medieval universities, the University of Paris often springs to mind, and for good reason. It was, without doubt, one of the most powerful and influential academic guilds of the Middle Ages, especially in the realm of theology and the arts. Emerging organically from the cathedral schools on the Ile de la Cité and the left bank of the Seine, Paris formally recognized itself as a studium generale by the early 13th century, solidifying its academic guild structure. Through various papal bulls and royal charters, its fame stemmed from its rigorous intellectual life and its strategic position in the heart of the French kingdom, close to both royal and papal power. The University of Paris was unique in its strong corporate organization, dominated by the masters. They formed 4 faculties: arts, theology, canon law, and medicine. The Faculty of Arts, particularly the Masters of Logic and Dialectic, was the largest and served as a preparatory school for the higher faculties. The Faculty of Theology, however, was the undisputed jewel of Paris. It became the ultimate arbiter of Christian doctrine in Western Europe. Popes and kings often consulted the theologians of Paris on complex theological and moral questions, and their pronouncements carried immense weight, often shaping papal policy and challenging secular rulers. This direct influence on the highest echelons of power marked Paris as an extraordinary force. The academic guild in Paris wielded immense power through its self-governance and its ability to act collectively. The masters elected their own rector, who presided over the university's affairs, often clashing with the Bishop of Paris and the King of France. One of the most famous demonstrations of their power was the Great Dispersion of 1229. After a violent incident between students and royal guards, the masters and students went on strike, literally packing up and leaving Paris for other cities like Orléans, Angers, and even Oxford. This mass exodus crippled the city and embarrassed the king, forcing King Louis IX and Pope Gregory IX to grant the university unprecedented privileges, including significant autonomy from royal and episcopal oversight. This event, detailed in various university chronicles, like the Cartularian Universitatis Parisiensis, proved the immense collective bargaining power of the academic guild. Paris was home to some of the most influential thinkers of the Middle Ages, including Thomas Aquinas, Bonaventure, and Albertus Magnus, whose philosophical and theological works defined scholasticism. The university's rigorous disputations, where scholars publicly debated complex questions, were legendary and drew audiences from across Europe. The university's power was not just academic. It was moral and political. It frequently intervened in the affairs of the church and state, condemning heresies, issuing opinions on wars, and even playing a central role in the Great Western Schism, advising on the election of popes. The sheer intellectual authority and organizational might of the University of Paris made it a force that popes and kings simply could not ignore. Pronouncements could shake kingdoms and define doctrine, placing it at the pinnacle of medieval academic power. Number 1. University of Bologna. Stand in the ancient streets of Bologna, Italy, and you are standing in the birthplace of the modern university and perhaps the most powerful academic guild of the medieval world. The University of Bologna, while its formal charter was granted by Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa in 1158, teaching of Roman law had been flourishing in Bologna since at least the late 11th century. Unlike Paris, which was master-dominated, Bologna was famously a student-dominated university. This unique structure gave its academic guild a distinct and often startling degree of power. The students of Bologna were often older, wealthy men, many of them already professionals or administrators who had come to study law. They formed powerful nations or guilds, electing their own rector, hiring their own professors, and setting their own fees and working conditions. They effectively controlled the university. Imagine paying your professors directly and having the power to fine them if they started late, lectured too long, or did not cover the required material. This was the reality in Bologna, and it gave the student body immense collective leverage over their instructors and the city itself. If conditions were not to their liking, the students, in a coordinated effort, could simply threaten to secede, packing up and moving to another city, taking their tuition fees and the city's economic livelihood with them. This happened repeatedly, leading to the foundation of other universities like Padua and Vercelli. The city authorities of Bologna often bowed to student demands to prevent such economically devastating departures. Bologna was renowned above all for its faculty of law. It became the definitive center for the study of Roman civil law and canon law. Jurists from Bologna systematized and interpreted the vast body of Roman law, a process known as the revival of Roman law, which profoundly influenced legal systems across Europe. Figures like Irnerius, often considered the founder of the Bologna school, and his successors, the glossators, and later the commentators, created a legal tradition that was studied for centuries. Their legal opinions carried immense weight in the courts of kings, popes, and emperors. Rulers from across Europe sent their brightest young minds to Bologna to learn the intricacies of law, ensuring a constant flow of influential alumni. These graduates returned to their homelands to serve as judges, royal advisors, and legal reformers. The power of Bologna's academic guild extended beyond the classroom. The university had its own courts and its own police force, often operating with more authority than the municipal government. Students enjoyed significant privileges, including exemptions from taxes and military service, and were often immune from local criminal justice. These privileges, fiercely protected by the student guilds, often led to clashes with the townspeople, but the university, backed by the students' collective wealth and willingness to migrate, typically prevailed. The intellectual output of Bologna, especially in law, was not just theoretical. It was intensely practical, shaping the very legal and administrative frameworks of medieval states. The student-led academic guild of Bologna, with its financial might, its legal expertise, and its willingness to assert its autonomy, stands as a prime example of an academic institution, wielding immense and enduring power in the medieval world, truly shaping the course of European history through its mastery of law.